Okay.
So just start with the Susan thing, and then we'll
Okay.
go from there.
Say my name is.
Okay. My name is Susan Bennett, and I am the original voice of Siri, as well as Tilly the All-Time Teller.
Awesome. Okay, so tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a voiceover actor.
Well, it's not for the faint of heart because you don't always have a job. It's like any other acting. Where most of us are freelancers. Some of us have, steady jobs like anchors, news anchors and people like that. But it encompasses a lot of different things. Radio and TV commercials, promos, narrations, animation, and all different kinds of things. So it's a lot of fun. It's very, very competitive. And the nice thing is that every single day is different. That's the main thing I like about it. And also, it's fun.
So is there any? I mean, it sounds like you kind of just came into it from music, but is it any kind of training that people usually like? How do you usually go about starting out in voice acting?
Well, there are a lot of people interested in it now, and what I tell people is that now the emphasis is really on the individual talent. In the past, when I first broke in, we all worked through agents, everything went through the union, there was a major structure. And now, as with many jobs that have been affected by technology and the internet, a lot of it is just up to the individual person. And there are a lot of production companies on the web, and a lot of people are breaking into voiceover that way. The key, though, is, like, as with anything else, you really need to have the skills. It's not just enough to have a good voice. You've got to be able to act. You've got to be able to read and speak articulately if necessary. And so there are skills to be had, and I always recommend that people find themselves a voice coach before they try to jump into it.
Okay. And when you were a musician before this? I mean, piano. But did you sing too?
I sang mostly. I play the piano by ear, and consequently, I can kind of sit down and play anything that I've heard, which I would have to say, in a sense, made me kind of a lazy, musical student. Even though I studied for many years and I studied in college as well, I never really became super proficient at the keyboard, but I did do a lot of singing, and that started in Atlanta. Used to do a lot of clubs and restaurants. I used to sing at the Lark and the Dove in years past, and many different restaurants and clubs. And my husband, guitarist Rick Hinkle, and I had a private event band for many, many years called Interactive. Started off as the Gibson Bennett Band with keyboardist Jim Gibson, and we had that band for many, many years. So
I guess you still play in your spare time?
yes, I still play and I still sing. Sometimes I will, drop into different restaurants and sing where my husband's playing. And we also have a band called Boomers Gone Wild. We play nothing but 60s and 70s rock and soul music. And we play the first Sunday of every month in Dahlonega, Georgia at the Crimson Moon. So come see us. We're here Sunday, January 7th. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
Cool. So tell us about what some of your favorite roles are so far, or some of the just more diverse ones that you've played.
Well, in the past, I used to do a lot of different voices. I did, this kind of person, and fortune teller, Madame Francesca, and a little elf named Star. And but mostly, I have to say, now that I'm a little bit older, and I do a lot of work that requires sort of pretty good vocabulary and articulation, so a lot of narrations and things like that. But I think probably my favorite gig of all time was the singing chicken for Zeneca Agricultural Products. And, it was all downhill after that.
We missed it. So you're going to have to give us a little jingle of the singing chicken.
Okay. Did I just kill your ears?
So not that the chicken is an accent, but how do you learn? Did you have to learn to do these accents, or does this just come naturally? Because I try to do a Jamaican accent and it goes Irish. It's definitely not for everyone.
Well, I think it comes really, really naturally to some people, and there are some voices that come very naturally to me. but it's very, very difficult to get an accent exactly right and maintain it, throughout, say, an entire project. And even, award-winning and very much acclaimed actors have a tough time being consistent with accents, reality accents. I mean, the big, broad, stereotyped accents are very easy. But the ones that are real, particularly, and I'm from New England, so I really notice this, no one ever gets the New England accent right. I think Diane Lane did.
Wow.
Yeah. And the woman, I forget her name, I think it's Amy something, that was in, I think, Gone Girl or something like that. She was really good. But mostly, it's only people from New England that really get the New England accent right. It's tough.
What are some of the other most difficult ones?
Well, anything where you have to be subtle. I mean, people could, try to mimic a Southern accent, and there are so many different types of Southern accents, which is true for New England as well. And there are certain sounds that are typical of a region, but basically they're more subtle than what people would normally want to do because it's not the sound that they're used to hearing, so it sounds really strange to them or very, very different. So.
Okay.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey, when he did that movie, I can't think of it, but he was a Southern person, and it was like horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just.
Well, Robin Williams, may he rest in peace, won the Oscar for Good Will Hunting, and his New England accent was terrible, and it was inconsistent. Sometimes it would be really, really strong, and sometimes it wouldn't be there, and it was like, eek.
So Apple and Lyft and Waze, like none of those companies are based in Atlanta. So how do you? I mean, I guess it's a little different than you're just presenting your voice, but how do you find these things to audition for, and then how do you actually audition for them?
The auditioning process is the way you get work these days. Now, I did not specifically audition for Siri. I must have been auditioning at some level. I had recorded some work and they'd heard it. But auditioning is necessary. I mean, unless people are looking for a particular celebrity voice and they just go directly to that person's agent. Now, you can get auditions through agents. You can get auditions through a lot of the different production companies that are on the web. As far as Siri type work and GPS work, that is called IVR, or interactive voice recognition. And most of that work, I ended up getting it through a company here in Atlanta that I've been working for many years called GM Voices. And a lot of those, the original vocabulary that I recorded that became Siri was recorded in 2005. And it was sort of become before the big techie, overtake. And so we didn't really, really know what we were doing. We thought we were just doing some sort of phone system work. And for the most part, voices that are on phone systems and that GPSs, people don't really notice the voice because they're looking for information. They're not looking to be entertained by, a commercial or something that the voice may be speaking. They're looking for the information. So unless the voice is particularly unusual or it's a celebrity voice, most people aren't going to notice the voice from a GPS or a phone message. But suddenly when that voice becomes a persona, like Siri or any of the other virtual assistants, it really changes the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you found out you were, you're going to be Siri, did you have any idea that it was going to take on this whole persona thing that it became?
I didn't ever find out that I was going to be Siri. I found that I was Siri the day that she appeared, which was October 4th, 2011. Yes, she's a Libra. And a fellow voice actor emailed me and said, "We're playing around with this new iPhone app. Isn't this you?" And I went, "Really?" And so I had ambivalent feelings. On the one hand, I thought, well, that's cool. They chose my voice to basically be the new voice of Apple. But the fact that I didn't know about it and that I didn't actually work with Apple directly, was kind of a strange thing. And all of the other original series that I've spoken to had basically the same experience. And I think it was just because we were sort of on the forefront of all this digital stuff.
Okay. And then, so you told us that after it took you a couple years to come around to actually tell everyone that you were Siri?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really kind of kept it under wraps for a while because I knew that it was a big deal and I knew that it was probably going to impact my career in some way, but I wasn't exactly sure how. So I was really, really hesitant about it. And finally, my husband and son both, they pestered me for, a very, very long time. And finally, it just clicked, and I said, yeah, what have I got to lose? Why not? This is a very unique opportunity. And it really has been good. It's been fun, and it's enabled me to find a whole different aspect of my career, which is speaker events and things like that, Siri appearances and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I can imagine if my mom was Syria, it'd be very difficult to keep that a secret when I'm out at
Right.
parties and stuff.
Well, a lot of people knew, but didn't necessarily talk about it. I mean, a lot of fellow voice actors certainly recognized my voice, although some didn't. So, I mean, obviously, Apple had, manipulated the voice in a certain way to sound, you know, exactly what they wanted it to sound like. When my husband and I did a little interview between Susan Bennett and Siri, he really had to work to make the Siri voice sound right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did that sound?
Well, it's really hard to say, but there are a lot of different things that affect sound, and it definitely sounded like my voice, but it had a different aspect to it. It needed to be compressed a little bit more or something. I couldn't tell you exactly technologically what my husband did to make it sound like Siri, but he had to work on it a bit.
Where is that interview? I didn't realize that ever happened.
Well, it was really sort of something for me personally, just as kind of a joke
Is
thing.
it on your website?
So I don't think it is on the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all these sentences that this other company that Apple ended up buying made you say, were they actually normal sentences, or do you sometimes read something that sounds like absolute gibberish and then they dissect it later?
All of the sentences that were recorded to make up, all of these voices, Siri, Alexa, Cortana, GPS voices, all of the sentences are created that we read were created to try to get all of the sound combinations in the language. Because basically what they were trying to get is as much of our voices as they could possibly get. They would go into the recordings afterwards and extract sounds, put them back together, and reform them into new phrases and sentences. And these are what ended up on our devices, the digital devices. This process, amazing process, is called concatenation. And I thought it was a special techie term, but it's actually just a term in English, and it means, linking things together.
Concatenation? Like
Concatenation,
C-O-N?
Concatenation, concatenation.
So how long did you spend, recording all these things for Siri specifically?
Well, the initial recordings, and of course, I don't really know, exactly what was recorded for Siri and what was recorded for something else.
Oh, okay.
I was just recording this work for Nuance, the company that provided the voices. And so I have really no idea, but I know that the original IVR work that I did was 4 hours a day, 5 days a week in July of 2007. So,
just 1 month?
yeah, so that was my summer vacation in 2005.
So what's the short range, the long range of how long a project might take you?
Well, I worked for that month, and then I did updates in 2011 and 2012. 4 months of updates, 2 hours a day instead of 4. And they wanted to put me under contract for 5 more years. So, it's impossible to say, a finite number of hours.
But then you didn't end up going under contract with them?
No.
Okay.
No, I reached a point where I had decided that I had really done enough of it. It's very, very, very tedious work. Very tedious because every phrase has to be read in exactly the same way. The same tone, the same pitch, the same pacing. And that gets not only tiresome, but it's tough on your vocal cords too. So.
Yeah, actually, that leads me into one of the questions I wanted to ask. Hand models do all this special stuff to their hands. What do you do to protect your voice?
Well, if you're working 4 hours a day, then you don't do much talking the rest of the day. It's very important. And of course, we're all different. I tend to have allergies, and so I have to be very careful and not do too much. Of course, you don't do any of those things that affect your throat, like smoke or drink, and dairy products are out. And so there are a lot of things that you have to do to protect your voice.
Oh, dairy products. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That part's rough. No ice cream.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, what's it like working in Atlanta, and how's it changed?
Well, I think working in Atlanta, you don't you you don't get as many opportunities to audition for the big national jobs. Occasionally, you do, um, but there is a lot of steady work because Atlanta is such a conference center, and there's so much corporate work here that there's a lot of work to be had. You know, it's not all the bling work. It's sort of the journeyman work, but it's work and it pays pretty well, and so there's a lot of work here.
Okay.
How it's changed is the way it's changed just all over the world. It's changed because of technology, because so many more people are able to have their own studios and audition, and so there's a lot more competition than there was before. And for me personally, um, it's more difficult for the individual voice talent than it was in the past, because in the past you did everything through your agent, and your agent was really sort of the advocate, and the person that you would have a relationship with your agent, and your agent would have probably have a relationship with the client that would call. The client would call and say, well, we need this person. They say, oh, okay, well, I'll give you our top 10 people to audition. And now I think we're auditioning against hundreds of people for almost every single job. And so the competition is stiff. And so that has been the major change, I would have to say.
Okay.
There's not really a structure there anymore, the way there was in the past.
So has the film industry taking off here, has that had any effect on how many the work here, or how many voice actors are here, or anything like that?
I'm not really sure. I don't do much. I don't do any film work really, and I don't do much on camera work anymore. But I know that it's brought a lot of work to Atlanta, and so I'd have to believe that yes, there is more work for people here. I think in general they still do a lot of major casting in Los Angeles, and then people in Atlanta and the surrounding areas would probably have smaller roles. But I mean, it's definitely a positive influence.
I'd say
So.
that's an issue for all the parts of the film industry here still,
Mm,
is that they're doing most of the casting and hiring and all that still, which is a problem for people in Georgia trying to work.
right.
Well, so I got this idea. Someone pitched us something that wasn't exactly the right fit. Liz, and she knows you.
Mm-hmm.
What's her last?
Helgeson.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're talking to her tomorrow.
Yep.
So it seems like it's kind of a small community. Like you guys all know each other here. Is that the case, or is it just a few of you that know each other?
Well, I don't think we know each other as well as we used to back when we would, run into each other at auditions in the agent's office. Now, pretty much people who are working a lot have their own home booths. And so I think the way that we get to know each other and that we do know each other is through different voiceover conferences, like VO Atlanta is happening, I think, in early March this year.
Oh, cool. Maybe
And
that's what she asked about.
yeah, and there are a lot of those conferences going on all over the country.
What happened? What's going to happen at that conference?
Well, sharing information, networking opportunities, having people who are experts in different fields of voiceover, giving workshops and things like that. It's a very valuable thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that there's more competition these days. Is that just because technology is making it easier, or why is that?
I think that's the case. Technology is making it a lot easier, but also I think people are sort of looking for something that's going to pay big bucks right away, and they're all hoping to audition and get this humongous, national spot that pays thousands of dollars. It's not impossible that would happen, but it's if you're really interested in doing voice work, it's like anything else. You need to commit to it and learn the skills and come up with a great demo, but make sure that your demo isn't so good that when you show up to do the job, you can't you can't do it. That's where the skills come in.
Okay. Well, so what was the process like before of auditioning for something before all this iPhone?
I'm sorry, I have 30 seconds before this shuts off. I want to start it over again before you answer that question.
Okay. Doing voiceover work in the past was very, very different. First of all, most of the work, even in a right-to-work state like Georgia, was union work, which meant that you got paid well. They put money aside for pension and health care. You got residuals. If they used the commercial again, they would make sure that you got paid again. And it's unfortunate that so much of the work has gone non-union now, but that's also a result of the fact that, so much of the work is going through the internet. But in the past, the way that, what would happen is that a client would go to your agent and say, this is what we're looking for. And the agent would call the talent that they felt, met that criterion. And so, you'd go to the agent's office and audition. And that was that. Now, one of the ways that was kind of a nice way to do things is that you possibly have the opportunity to meet the client or at least interact with the agent. And now I find that the way that we're doing it now with our own home booths all the time is a little bit isolating.
Okay. Do you have any idea, how many jobs you've had over the years?
Oh, no,
Dozens,
just,
hundreds?
thousands, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing this for a long time.
And then so you said that Siri helped you get speaking gigs and stuff like that. Has it helped your career? Was it helping you get more jobs? Like, has it, helped people your name recognition? Just Susan Bennett.
I don't think so. I don't think it's had much of an impact on getting just regular jobs. It's definitely had an impact when people want someone who sounds like Siri, or they want the actual voice of Siri. And certainly, I appreciate it for the fact that, I just have a whole new aspect of my career happening that I never would have imagined, going out and speaking to people, because a lot of what I talk about how the recordings were done, and then I talk about the voiceover business, and I do a lot of different voices for people. And then I talk about how the impact on me personally. And I think that can reach a lot of people because I'm very much an introvert. And so part of the reason that, that I didn't come right out and reveal myself as Siri was like, oh no, am I going to have any privacy now? And so it was a very good life lesson for me.
So how has it affected you personally?
Well, the ways in which I mentioned, I mean, it has made given me more work. I've got a fabulous agent in Los Angeles that I wouldn't have been able to get without this, I don't think. Wes Stevens at Vox in LA, and that group has done very well for me. The other ways that it's been helpful, I think it's just learning to deal with something that was completely unexpected, something that I didn't really work for, and something that I didn't aspire to, sort of happened, and that kind of thing, whether it's positive or negative, can be, quite a life lesson. And so it has been.
Cool. Well, Byron, that was about all I had written down. Do you want to? What would you have?
No more. I need to get some B-roll, but the voices again. Which one were your favorite voices in looking at Ellie?
Well, my absolute favorite voice of all time, I think, is event planner Shaka Cohen. You've heard of Shaka Khan, darling. Well, I'm Shaka Cohen. I do it all. Weddings, bar mitzvahs. I'm fabulous. Call me darling.
I'm not supposed to talk when he's recording this, and it's or laugh, and it's so difficult.
And then the Southerner, did you have a hard time? Did you do very many Southerners?
The Southerners that I did were like really, really, really out there. Like that person. Well, I love going to the club and, having my mint juleps with my friends, That's not a very good one either. I'd have to work on it a little bit more. I haven't done a Southerner for a while.
That sounds like a Buckhead.
Yes.
That's very good.
One of the ladies who lunch. Yeah. No, I love doing British. I love to do the evil queen. Come. Let me put my magic spell on you.
Excellent.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to say about your career, or?
Yes, what I would like to say is Siri is for hire. So please call Siri. She's a very type A personality, and she likes to be busy at all times. So I do all sorts of work. I do narrations. I do phone messaging, and even a little dancing. Okay, not really.
How would Siri ask for a job? I mean, what would Siri...
Siri would not ask for a job. Siri would just tell you, you are going to hire Siri. And today is a very good day. She has some time for you.
What percentage of your
Well, it really depends. It really depends. It sort of goes in cycles. And, as with interviews, all of a sudden I went for maybe 2 or 3 months with no interviews. And then I think I've had like 10 interviews in the past week. I don't know. It's one of those things. That's why you sort of have to kind of keep positive and put your money aside. And, when you're a freelancer, because you never really know. Sometimes it's a busy week and sometimes not.
So is how large of a portion would you say is the speaking appearances now?
Well, I'm not doing as much as I would like to, so I'd really like to get that thing. I would really like to get that going more, and yeah.
I would, if I was going to hire a speaker, I'd much rather hire you. I've heard some boring speeches, but like going on
Oh.
there and doing all those accents has to keep the crowd entertained. All right, you good? Okay. Well, would you mind?
Good.
Can you start out by telling us, what your name is and what your job is?
Sure. My name is Liz Helgeson, and I am a professional voiceover talent. And I also coach and help people make their lives better. So,
Okay. And what is your favorite part about your job?
my favorite part about my job, I would say, is that I get to touch lives on such a broad scale that, you know, not just with my specialty being automated speech, but even, training videos or commercials, I realize that I get to touch lives in such a huge, enormous way and make a difference, whether I'm, I want to say selling you Tide or helping you get your bank balance. That my goal is that you feel connected with, and that guided, assisted, helped, that made your life a little easier. So I would say that's what I like best about my job. I think it's the bigger purpose and the making people, having an effect on another person.
Okay.
So.
What are where are some of the places that you can tell us about that we might have heard your voice?
Well, you certainly would hear me in a lot of automobile navigation systems. I can't name all the cars. I can say Lexus and Toyota, but there are many others. There's about 9 different automobile manufacturers where you would hear me. You would also hear me locally on the MARTA trains and buses, and in the internal corporate MARTA interactive voice response system. And so yeah, telling you what your next stop is, that's my voice on MARTA.
What was your first big voiceover job?
My very first voiceover job was the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. About 30 years ago, they implemented one of the first interactive voice response systems, which is a telephone system where people could press 1 and press 2 to get information about different diseases when they're traveling to different countries. And I was the narrator giving this information to people, for travel all over the world. So.
Okay. And so where did you hear about the MARTA job and know to apply?
Well, it's so funny because I was reading the Atlanta Business Chronicle in 1995, and there was, I think it was a front page article that MARTA was implementing a system that would trip as the trains pass a certain stop, and that it would trigger a voice to tell people what their next stop was. And they were implementing it for the Olympics. And I read immediately, and they had not picked a voice yet. And I knew that I had to be the voice on MARTA because the world was coming to our city. And I had to be the voice to tell people, to guide people and help them get, to their next stop. So I actually called MARTA and I had an interview. I didn't send them an MP3. There was, wasn't going on in 1995. But I interviewed with their the marketing person, and a couple other people wanted to know why it was important to me to be the voice of MARTA, and that's what I told them, that, oh my goodness, the world is coming to Atlanta, and I just knew that I wanted our city to have a professional image and to be seen as, this Olympic city. So,
Okay.
but it was in the Atlanta Business Chronicle. It's so funny to me.
Does Atlanta have a very big voiceover community?
I would say that it does. I know that it's gotten bigger. There's a very large pool of people who do this for a living. I don't know the percentage that are, working, consistently. I know that the voiceover industry looks very different today than it did, 30 years ago. I would say that I could, I don't know the percentages anymore. I used to be able to say the percentage of people that are actually full-time working talent would be, something. But nowadays, it's a much larger pool.
Okay. Can you repeat just the first sentence? Repeat it
With the
including my
question.
question in it, since my voice, I record my voiceovers later, so my voice here won't actually be asking the
Okay.
questions on the tape.
Okay, so which question was that?
It was just, do you think that Atlanta has a very big voiceover community?
I think Atlanta does have a large voiceover community, and I think that pool is getting larger and larger because of technology, because it's has become easier for people to build studios and set themselves up with equipment and create an online presence that's easily accessible and make themselves accessible and available. It's no longer, just through an agent. It's, everyone is there. We're our own marketeers. And so it's up to us to create ourselves and our businesses and, get ourselves out there.
Okay. And that was basically what I was going to ask her on tape. Do you have anything you want to ask her?
Yeah, sure. What are some of the techniques and things that you, and looking at Ellie, and what are some of the things that you do to warm up and get prepared for a voiceover?
So I have very specific voice exercises that I do once I'm in the studio. But before that, if I know I have a big upcoming job, for example, some of the jobs I do are, 4 hours a day, 2 weeks at a time, and I'm reading and having to inflect and match and sound the same at, position 1 that I do 2 weeks later is hydrating. So I hydrate, lots of water. I do a lot of tea. I gargle with salt water. That's really the best I have found for keeping myself not sick, healing any tiny, slight little laryngitis issues that might be coming. I also, I make sure that I finished eating 30 minutes before a session starts, because then I have stomach noise. So there's a whole, now that I know myself and I know my body and I know what happens to me, I kind of have like this automatic routine, like all of us do, with how we get our day going, and that's just my automatic go-to stuff. There's also mouthwashes and sprays that I use in my studio that help with dry mouth, help with too much wetness. So it's kind of like I have my own little pharmacy right there of sprays and lozenges and whatnot. And oftentimes I end up not even needing anything, but it's all there if I need it. So.
You good?
Yeah, I think so. Just making sure, thinking back on the other interview to tie them together. And
I asked her similar but not identical stuff, so we wouldn't
oh,
know.
yeah. So do you have a favorite voice that you like to do, a range, or is there?
So my favorite voice is being joyful. I recently created a persona for a company, Nuance, my client, international Nuance, and I had to be joyful. And I loved it because I now know that that joyful persona is going to be implemented throughout the world. And what do we need more nowadays than joy? I mean, all of us could use joy. We wake up every day and look at the news, and it's a lot of hard stuff. And so I feel completely honored and blessed that I get to be that woman, that I get to be that voice that gets to touch people's lives in such a joyful way, whether it's riding in a car or hearing me in some other, on a banking system, however that particular system that I just built is going to materialize, that I got to be a part of making that kind of impact on the world. So it's my purpose, it's my mission, it's who I am, and I mean, I can't say anything more powerful than that about that I get to do this for a living.
That makes sense that because so many of the hotlines and MARTA, it's kind of like a cold, clean voice, so it must be a
Right.
change for you to be able to do the joyful thing.
Yes, and it's joyful and more natural. So both are just, my gift to you. And I say that not from an ego perspective, but from a truly blessed gift that I get to give to the world. So,
Did
yes.
we get a sample of any of this?
The sample, I haven't been able to give you that joyful person because it's, I'm contracted not to,
That's with NDAs.
yeah, to even say, but I can say I'm joyful with nuance, but I can't give you the name of my persona.
So there's nothing that, like maybe the Toyota that because you did mention that, can you give us a sample of that?
Turn left ahead. I can certainly say that, or
So you got to set it up for us. So some of the voices that we might hear, and so some of the voices that you might hear in a Toyota car, and then go from there.
See, I would have to have a script. I could read it to you, but I would have to have because I mean, I'm a little bit, I'm a little intimidated. So
Oh, it's okay. No worries.
Not by us.
I know. So if I could think of a line, press the talk switch. I would have to see it. I could grab a line of it, but I would have to see it. But
Okay, I understand. There's no worries.
Yeah, I completely understand. I can't
All
read
right.
a voicemail, so.
That's what I get for asking for something on the spot.
Toyota doesn't massage you, so I can't say that. But there have been. Am I recording?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're on.
don't use this because I would identify the automobile that gives you a massage.
Why don't you just let her go grab something?
Or, you can tell that it's me. Like now that you've interviewed me, now that you guys have spoken to me, you will be able to pick me up in your car. So I went to car shopping with my son on Saturday, and we sat in the showroom in the cars, and the guy showed us how to turn them on, and it's me. So my son just bought a car with his mom in the speech navigation system. Is that funny? Poor kid. I know, right?
That's pretty good.
Isn't that
actually.
funny?
Yeah, that's a good one. Especially, he can't leave mom.
Can't leave the house, right? So he bought the car. We were just there helping him, with the negotiations and whatnot, but it was,
Does it tell you to slow down or anything like that?
oh, that's funny. Well, it says you cannot modulate your CDs while the car's in motion, something like that. It tells them, wait till you come to a complete stop before you can do that,
And that's
operate
what
that
you tell
feature.
him. That's what you told him when you
That's
started driving, right?
That's exactly right. I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at her.
Yeah.
Because you told me to, right? So I'm
Right.
supposed to be answering your funny things by talking to her.
I don't exist here.
So I still haven't thought about it because I've continued to talk. my uncle. My uncle went shopping with his son in Miami to buy him a car. They got a Toyota, and it was me. My uncle texting me, "Oh, we just, bought Harris a car, and you're the voice." Um, so yeah, I could tell you a funny story about. I hear myself when I call my gastroenterologist. My husband and I were recently in New York for a Voice Award ceremony, and we wanted to stay. Our first choice, of course, the Waldorf, was closed for renovation, so we chose our second choice, which was the Hampton Inn, Times Square. And of course, I was calling the Hampton Inn to make arrangements for a car to Lincoln Center, and while I was on the phone, they had, to transfer me to this desk and that desk, and whose voice did I hear at the Hampton Inn in New York, Times Square? My voice. So that was absolutely hysterical. So that was an actual phone system, and I could tell that it was a phone system from many years ago. So, I am out there embedded on systems. So that was just another cute recognition story.
I love it.
Wow, that's really funny.
That is
Yeah,
a funny one.
I know. So,
Okay, good.
We're good.
all right. You sure you're good without me getting Toyota
Yeah.
footage or?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We'll start off with the tough question. That's your name, title, and what you do here.
Hi, I'm Brian Troxel. Brian Troxel, I'm an audiobook narrator and voice. Okay, perfect.
How you spell the last name?
It is Troxell.
All right. Excellent. So tell me, how did you get started in doing? That question to us now. How did you get started into doing voiceovers?
Well, when I was in college at Georgia Tech, I did play-by-play for the baseball team on the college radio station. That's really what I always wanted to do. And then I graduated with a degree in computer science, and during the 90s, the tech boom happened, so I wrote software and joined the corporate world. And right about before I turned 40, almost 10 years ago, I thought, you know what? I should go back and try that voiceover thing because I'd rather try it and fail than look back and never do it. So I started taking classes and expecting to do it until somebody told me I was terrible at it and should give it up, and that never really happened, and things sort of escalated and became my second career after I turned 40.
What are some of the challenges in staying fresh and just being able to do what you do on a daily basis?
Working on a daily basis so you can pay the bills and not have to worry about a second job, which I'm fortunate enough to do. But once the challenge is just making sure that you enjoy it. You keep enjoying it. You don't ever get jaded by it or anything like that. And I do. I enjoy doing what I do. I don't even consider anything a challenge. Even if it's something, days that I get up and I don't feel like doing it, I start doing it and I'm happy. So.
What's what would you give? What kind of advice would you give others that are interested in getting into this business? And what are some of the tips?
A lot of folks will say, "Oh, I've got a great voice. I can do voiceover." And one thing, when I first joined the industry, I was lucky enough to have a coworker who was an actor and a voiceover person, and he was like, "Yeah, your voice is great. You also need to know how to act, so take some acting lessons." So it's not just having a good voice, it's knowing what to do with it and getting emotions and ideas and things across like that. So not only having a good voice, but taking acting lessons and knowing having an instrument and knowing how to play it, essentially. Two different things.
When we were talking earlier, you mentioned how there's some voices that you enjoy doing. What are some of the voices and what are the different voices that you have to do or go into making a book?
Well, a lot of it comes out of the book itself. When I do an audiobook, a fiction audiobook, I read the whole thing and I take notes. Every time a new character appears, I write down their name and any descriptive phrases about them, like, even their height or what they look like, or if I'm lucky enough to get a description like, oh, they have a high-pitched, nasally voice with a British accent, that makes my job easy. And sometimes authors don't give you any description at all. And so the more description in the book, the easier it is for me to assign a voice to that. And I'll start reading out loud while I'm reading along and play with things and see what fits. And the other thing is you have to make sure that if two characters are in the same scene, their voices are different enough where they don't blend together and get confusing to the listener.
Um, what else is? I'm trying to think. There was one other thing. Oh, so can we hear some of the voices that you've been able to assemble over the years?
Well, one of my favorite books is a book called Bull Mountain, and the bad guy in that book is a government agent who is secretly villainous, and he's very slow, methodical, and he's planned out this revenge scheme for years. And he's really my favorite voice because he's very condescending to everybody he talks to. He's very measured. He never flies off the handle. He knows he's in charge, and he knows he's going to take you down, and he's very patient about waiting for the right moment.
And to contrast it to someone he would be talking to give separation, what would that sound like?
Well, the other bad guy in that book was an old mountain man from Georgia, and he was down here like this, and he was very angry all the time, and he would fly off the handle to everybody. So those are your two villains.
And I guess over time it just takes to hone in those voices and polish them.
Right. I mean, I've got some voices in my bag of tricks, as they say, but a lot of times, and that's really where a good book helps, is that you'll read something and something will jump off the page and go, oh, I want to try this. And so really my job is to enhance the characters that are already there. And good writing makes my job so much easier and so much more fun because, it's fun to get in the booth and try things that I haven't done before. Like I did a book series that took place in New Orleans, and there were a lot of Cajun characters, and I didn't have a Cajun accent in my bag of tricks, so I had to spend like a week just working on different Cajun subtle differences between them, but that was a fun challenge, and in the end I got there, and it was great because now I can talk Cajun if I have to. So it all depends. A great book brings out things in me that I didn't think I had.
And I guess the end result is wonderful ear sounds or music to the listener.
Right. One of my best compliments was the author of Bull Mountain told me that somebody came up to him and said, I listened to the audiobook of Bull Mountain. How many people were in the cast? And it was just me. And that's probably the best compliment I can get as an audiobook narrator.
Excellent. Anything else you'd like to add?
Anything else? I'd like to add. I'm happy that audiobooks have become as popular as they have because it keeps me working.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now what I'll need to do is get a picture of you.
Sure.
And we'll do that actually with this. Let me